everybody, hope you're doing marvellously well. We're back with another Fact Friday. I just flew back from London, where I was at Abbey Road. It is, I don't know, 9 or 10 o'clock at night. And the reason why I don't know is because it's Thursday, the night before the video comes out. And a couple of hours ago, I got off a plane. In Tuesday, Wednesday, and I suppose part of Thursday, I've been in London, which is rather wonderful. We went to Abbey Road, Studio 3, where, of course, they most famously recorded Revolver. It has now become a very, very famous mixing room. Love was mixed there, for instance, with Giles Martin and plenty of other great records. So we went there to try out the new Waves NX. It was the launch. And I will say, I'm very impressed. The idea of the NX, and I will review it properly. I just got back, so I haven't had a chance to review it. We'll probably film the review on Saturday. But what I love about this is an idea that I had a while ago, and they went ahead and did it. I like using headphones. Sometimes I'm forced to use headphones, and sometimes it's a choice. But the reality with headphones, as I'm sure you know, is that you get a false center because you're only hearing left and right. You're not getting that idea of the center you get from speakers where you're hearing a bit of the left in your right ear and a bit of the right in your left ear. So you also don't get the depth front to back that you would with speakers. So my theory always was, well, how come we can't make headphones emulate being in control rooms with nice speakers? So what Waves did, the rather smart people, they spent some considerable time in Studio 3 emulating that room. It's got a near, a mid, and a far set of speakers. And I will say to you, and I'm sure I'll say it again in the review, I was talking to Yotan, one of the guys at Waves, and I had the headphones on, and we were clicking through the plugin, and we were on the nears, and it felt pretty realistic. Like I was sitting listening to a pair of small, medium-size speakers sitting on a console. I could bypass it, and then suddenly it's super like in your ears, just straightforward headphone sound directly in there. And go back to the nears, and I was like, this is nice. And then he went to the mids, and I was like, oh yeah, this really feels like I'm sitting a little bit further back. I've got a bit more sound. Then, while we were still talking, he hit the far speakers. God's honest truth, I thought that some speakers have been turned on in the room. And I took off my headphones thinking, I wonder where that sound's coming from because the speakers sound like they're about 12 feet away. There was no sound. Put the headphones back on. I mean, it is unbelievable how realistic it sounds. What I love about those 3 sets they've got there, there's so much more to talk about it, but what I loved, this is just a peripheral look at it. This is a really, really good idea because you can trust your ears now. You can trust the results you're going to get because the headphones, we were using the Sennheiser 600s, and there's an emulation that fits that. So if you have one of the 10 or 12 headphones that they've got and they're adding more to it, you will basically get the sound of being in that room. And I can guarantee it because I did it. I went and sat in the room and listened to the same sampled pieces of music in the same position, and then I went back to the laptop and listened in the other room and backwards and forwards. And it's remarkable. It feels like you're sitting in a world-class, one of the most famous world-class studios in the world, mixing there. It's a really, really good idea. It's not as fatiguing. You can trust the low end now. You're like, wait there. This kick feels big and fat. It feels great in the room. It feels great on the headphones. It's a really, really smart idea. It's going to really, really help a lot of people out. It's going to help a guy like me out because I'll be able to sit wearing headphones, editing and doing cleanup or going down and sitting on my laptop, and I'm going to be able to emulate being in a room. Oh, there's so much more to it. Basically, because it comes with the head tracker that goes on the top of your headphones, and then you calibrate it so you're looking directly in front of you at the monitor, say to work. It will then, after it's calibrated, you move your head. You're literally moving your head in the room. It's really nice. Very, very smart. Anyway, let's get into some Fact Friday questions. How and where do you obtain insurance for your studio and its gear? Is there a specialist company that you use? I don't use a specialist company because I use my home insurance. About 6 months ago, we went and did inventory, and it took a while. And we got a lot of gear. A lot of gear. And so we had to list everything and then make sure it was on the insurance. Now, I do know from personal experience there are some great insurance companies. I would love it if people could give us a list of the companies they've used. I do also know that Musicians Union also has insurance available as well for gear. And I might try that if there's a Musicians Union in your local area. I might try them first. However, if there's any particular insurance companies that people want to recommend, I'm all ears. You know, I have my solution, and I do know touring musicians. I know ones that use Musicians Union, but if there's others, please let us know below. This is the great thing about this community. We're all here to help each other. What monitors would you choose for mixing and mastering? Focal SM9 or Focal Trio 11s? Genelec 8351s or question mark, question mark? Let's turn around for a second. So I have the Genelecs 1032s. I also have a pair of 1031s in my other studio. I have some Focals, I have some Calis. We're going to do something pretty major here. We also have Harmony, and Harmony has a pair of Eves down there. And you're going to see that whole studio because we've just done a full build there. We put in a console, we put in a lot of great stuff. There's a video coming on that soon. So it's our other studio where we occasionally film from. The Genelecs have been my go-to speakers, and it used to be Genelecs and NS10s for 20 plus years. And that was the combination that I used. And if you went around LA all the way through the mid-90s, probably up until fairly recently, that was the combination of speakers you saw in every Los Angeles studio. Pair of Genelecs, pair of NS10s. Those are what everybody used and everybody loved. I still use the Genelecs on a daily basis. The Calis, which are $300 a pair, are the best thing on the market for the price. By far. They are unbelievable. We feel very proud to be one of the first people to talk about them, if not the first people to talk about them. And I just love that every day I see more and more reviews on them, all of them just saying how incredible they are. So we do use them, but most importantly, they're up there because they need to be up there. They need to be up there for you to know that these speakers work and you can mix on them, and they're $300 a pair powered. So you just plug it out of your interface and off you go. Absolutely amazing product for the money. Focals I love as well. And yes, the Trio 11s are going up soon. We ordered the stands. They haven't arrived yet, no? No, Eric is shaking his head. They haven't yet arrived, and we did order them a few weeks ago. We're going to put our Trio 11s pretty wide. We'll probably lose at least one of the pairs of speakers, and the Trio 11s are going to be super wide. And there's going to be a beautiful sweet spot of me sitting here, and they are amazing. I am gravitating towards the Focals and the Eves because of ribbon tweeters in the Eves, and the Focals because they have the beryllium tweeters. And both are very, very detailed without being fatiguing. And I think as I do this for a longer period of time, that's something I'm looking for. I need detailed high end, but I don't need it to be unbelievably loud and ear bursting. I just need to hear the detail in there. Also, good front to back is really important to me now. I want to hear a lot of depth. I don't just want speakers that are loud and are pushing in your face. So I have gravitated towards speakers that when I listen to a mix, I feel like I can hear a lot of depth. And one of the downsides of super, super bright tweeters on speakers is it pushes everything forward. So I will tell you, the Focals and the Eves are getting a lot more love along with the Calis, but I would never discount a pair of Genelecs. They are still the speakers that I know best because I've been using them for 20 years. I think variety is necessarily the spice of life, but variety is also a way and means that you can check mixes. We have the little Fender Bluetooth speaker up there we can put mixes through that we just got up and running. We used to have a Bose Wave radio in here we would check on as well. That's, I think Jack Douglas has that. And my point is that having a lot of speakers for reference purposes is not a bad thing. Being able to play through a boombox is not a bad thing. Listening on your headphones, listening on your laptop, listening on your phone, all of these are great things. But if you're asking about what I'm using mostly, it's going to be mainly the Focals, the Eves, the Calis, and of course the Genelecs will never go away. I would have to ask questions about you to answer your questions specifically, like What are you used to? Because if you're used to speakers and you can get good results on them, it's all that matters. I know people that still mix on NS10s, and it's ridiculous. They have a 7 dB lift at 1.5K. They are the most mid-rangey, aggressive speakers ever in the mid-range. But if you can mix something and it sounds amazing on it, that's all that matters. I hope you're enjoying this. Please leave a bunch of comments and questions below. And of course, this is where we come to get future Fact Fridays. So please leave some below. Don't forget, of course, you can go to producelikeapro.com and sign up for the email list and get a whole bunch of free goodies. Should I print the raw tracks before applying EQ and other effects to the tracks? I always apply all the effects to the raw mono tracks. Am I wrong? When I first started recording, you would pull up the faders on a console at the end of the record, zero them all out, pan them around, and it would sound like the record. That's still something when I did the Phrase second album. All the tracks come up like that. If you pull them all up at zero and pan them around, they sound really super close to the record. I EQ'd and compressed on the way in just how I wanted to hear everything, and it's pretty effective. You know, the drums sound like the drums, the guitar sound like the guitars, the piano sounds like the piano. Everything sounds like in its place. So I suppose you can track through quite a lot of plugins. I mean, UAD are renowned for having the lowest latency and being able to track through. So if you use UAD plugins, that's something you could do. I will say that putting plugins on the source is not necessarily a problem, because you want to be able to have a sound be the way you want it to be, a part be the way you want it to be, before you move on and do another part. If you're giving yourself 100 tracks with nothing defined, that is a nightmare to mix. You want to specifically, nail down the sound of the part. The part itself with the tone have to be established before you record something else. But if you're saying something about putting effects on the track, you can do that. I personally will set up multi-effects on a separate stereo fader. So if it's, say, reverbs or delays or a combination, modulation of effects like flanging and chorusing or a phaser or something, I'll put those on stereo buses and separate to the track, and then I'll send from the track to those stereo buses. There's a couple of reasons for doing that. Is one, I can automate these effects separately and keep the signal dry. So let's just say I want the reverb to kind of go, and fade down, or I want the reverse. I want the reverb to come up in volume, but I want the dry signal to stay the same. That makes a lot more sense. Also, I might have one stereo reverb set up for an overall drum kit sound, which I do. I call it the fake room. And I might turn up the sends. I might have more kick or more snare in one section, or a big tom fill and crank the reverb there. So it's nice to have one stereo reverb that's sending from multiple sources that can be controlled going into it, rather than having multiple reverbs that I have to run tons of different kinds of automation to. So your answer is yes, you can do exactly what you're talking about. I do think you need to commit to the sound that you want, but then for effects, if it's going to be, I don't know, maybe a mono guitar part and you've got a slap delay on it, you can put it on there. You can put slap delay right on it and emulate the idea of the guitar player using a pedal in his signal chain. But if it is things like drums or multiple background vocals, just set up a stereo reverb or a stereo delay or whatever stereo effects and then send to it. It will give you a lot more flexibility, and it will save on opening up, 12 instances of reverbs as well. Do you always render MIDI virtual instruments from MIDI files to audio WAV files when mixing? Yes, if I'm sending it out, definitely. If we've got a particular synthesizer sound that that's maybe we tweaked a patch, I'd much rather print that to audio and give that to the mixer, because I've committed to a sound, than I would put a plugin on there, virtual instrument, and hope that he happens to own the same one. He probably would if he or she was a really well-known mixer, but they may not. So why risk it? So print the audio. And I think when we're mixing our own stuff, it's sort of 6 of one, half a dozen the other. Most of the time, if I'm mixing a virtual instrument, I will probably print when we start layering a lot of stuff, because You know, if I've got 3 or 4 virtual instruments going on and then I start adding plugins to mix and, you know, reverbs and delays and compression, all kinds of other stuff, EQs, etc., what's going to happen is my computer is going to start to really slow down. So those are the kind of instances that will start printing audio. Background vocals in particular is something we do a lot of combination to. You know, I'll have Eric do it all the time. We'll get the blend of backgrounds. It might be 16, you know, stereo parts or 8 stereo parts, whatever it might be. We get the blend and then we just bounce it, you know, as a stereo file, and it's done and it's there forever. You know, it's really about file management, or whether you're giving it to somebody else to mix or it's staying in-house. So just trying to get that balance. If it's just 1 or 2 virtual instruments, I probably wouldn't bother if I was just mixing here. But if it's 1 or 2 virtual instruments, but I'm sending the mix out, I will print it. If it's about 4, 5, or 6 virtual instruments, I'm definitely printing it, because as soon as I start opening up a ton of plugins, the computer might just go and die on me. I hope you enjoyed that. Thank you ever so much for all the wonderful questions. Thanks for bearing with me. It is, I have been up 10, 6. Oh, I've been up 24 hours. So I should probably go in the house and go to sleep. But I had a wonderful time in London, Abbey Road, even though I was only there for 1 full day, half a day, arriving, full day there, and then flew out the next morning. Wow. Yes. That's called a whistle-stop tour, I think we call that. It was a lot of fun. Have a marvellous time recording and mixing. Please leave a bunch of comments and questions below. And of course, future FAQ Friday questions. Don't forget, we'd love to know, who do you use for insuring your instruments? That would be amazing. And any other tips or tricks that you want to share with us, I'd really appreciate it. Have a marvellous time recording and mixing.